paper reports that two of the male prostitutes were given a late-night tour of the White House last year.
I think I'm entitled.
You want answers!
I want the truth!
You can't handle the truth!
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Nick Bryant podcast. Today, I'm opening the Franklin Vault, and I'm going to play my interview with Paul Rodriguez, the former Washington Times reporter who was an extraordinary investigative journalist. Paul was nominated for 4 Pulitzer Prizes, and he's the reporter whose investigation into the D.C. skin trade and ultimately Craig Spence culminated in sensational headlines like callboys took midnight tours of the White House and power brokers served drugs, sex at parties bugged for blackmail. The latter article elucidated Spence's penchant for blackmailing the partygoers who had the misfortune of attending his soirees. Paul was also the prime mover in linking Craig Spence and Lawrence E. King. As I investigated the Franklin scandal, Paul was very helpful. He had taken a lot of heat when he was investigating the skin trade in Washington, D.C. He had been followed, threatened, and his house had been broken into. I was initially concerned for my safety when I started investigating the Franklin scandal, and I asked Paul about my concerns. Paul replied with, "If they're going to kill you, they're going to kill you." So I embraced Paul's maxim, only to find out later that he acquired a snub-nosed .38 from a family member. Paul and the reporters of the Washington Times wrote articles that peeled away the shiny veneer of our politicians in Washington, D.C., and showed us the cesspool that they swim in that is replete with child abuse and blackmail. Unfortunately, the Washington Times is owned by the Moonies, a rather unsavory cult. So it was easy for the Washington Post to run roughshod over the Washington Times reporting with disingenuous articles that protected the status quo. The Washington Post also conscripted the New York Times and Los Angeles Times to help it disingenuously deconstruct the remarkable articles of the Washington Times reporters. A protracted article accompanies the Paul Rodriguez interview, in which I show how the Washington Post protected the cesspool that is Washington, D.C., and also a possible motive.
It is February 22nd, 2005, and I'm speaking with Paul Rodriguez. Paul, you had gotten information, from what I understand, from law enforcement and also from several prostitutes that Larry King and Craig Spence were somehow connected.
I had been told by several prostitutes that I was working with, along with law enforcement, that there were connections between Craig Spence and Larry King.